The availability of an official MCP server for Fabric from Microsoft was one of the first announcements by Amir Netz in the FabCon Europe keynote, but it was covered very briefly. But let's start with that announcement.
So very exciting. Now, talking about AI, well, we want to make sure that AI can really help you work with Fabric. So we are adding MCP servers for developers in Fabric. So it means that now your AI can go and create workspaces, create items, manage the entire Fabric. It's also open source. You can go in GitHub and take a look, and maybe you can extend it even further.
Okay, so let's take a step or two back. Firstly, what is an MCP server? When you use a standardized LLM, like an out-of-the-box chat experience, you're limited to its training data and whatever tools it might have built in. But as developers, we need that AI to understand our specific environment and to take concrete actions in the tools we're using, in this case in Power BI and Fabric. An MCP server acts as an open protocol that extends the capabilities of a large language model, allowing it to use tools to interact with its external environment, to retrieve information, and actually take actions such as perhaps making changes to a semantic model or triggering a refresh. And we're not talking about asking basic questions here. We're talking about giving you a collaborative partner, an agent, that can sit next to you and do a lot of the tedious work you want to avoid. Or perhaps it can help you to deploy or to migrate solutions to Power BI and Fabric in a structured and intelligent manner, if you're able to provide it with the right context. So let's have a look at the GitHub repo for this open source MCP server that Amir referenced, aka.ms. It starts with explaining Model Context Protocol as an open protocol that standardizes how applications provide context to large language models. It allows AI applications to connect with various data sources and tools in a consistent manner, enhancing their capabilities and flexibility. Then there's a link to the Fabric MCP server along with others from Microsoft. The description of the Fabric MCP server is a local, AI-friendly Model Context Protocol server that packages Microsoft Fabric's OpenAI specifications, schema definitions, examples, and curated guidance into a single context layer for AI agents and developer tools. So, at its core, it's a structured way to call the Fabric APIs without you having to build your own application to do it. But it's actually more powerful than that, because it can also work out what APIs to call, with what parameters, depending on the context of what you're trying to achieve, and what best practices for your development scenario are. You could provide this context through the LLM application that is connected to the MCP server, and specifically through prompt and context engineering, things like markdown files where you explain your development guidelines and requirements. But I think you'd want to work out what roles and activities specifically you want to let an MCP server loose on. Perhaps starting with your Fabric production environment is a little risky, but how the strategy for what it is you're trying to specifically achieve with it. Is it automated deployments? Is it improved developer productivity for a whole range of tasks? I think actually Power BI is perhaps a safer and more natural place to start, using it on an offline file backup copy of your Power BI model and report to automate some of those tedious tasks you've typically spent hours or days on in Power BI desktop, or perhaps even external tools. Maybe for things like renaming measures or columns one by one across your semantic model. And here, the combination of AI and the MCP server makes these kinds of tasks significantly easier. The AI can analyze the naming convention you prefer, perhaps one you've already applied manually to one table, and apply that consistent naming convention across your entire model using the server's tools. Luckily, there's also a separate Power BI MCP server for this, which is entering private preview. To see it in action, we can review some snippets from Rui Romano's session at the end of the FabCon Europe conference, where he showed the Power BI MCP server.
I have the semantic model, and I want to do a bulk rename on my semantic model. But before doing that, I want to do it once. I will do it to one table, so I will rename the table, I will rename the measures with this new naming convention, and rename all the columns. Of course, I'm not going to bore you with that. So I rename everything as I like. And now, normally, and probably many of you already did this, you went to go and spend the whole day renaming stuff, one by one. With the MCP server and together with AI, you could make this becomes a lot easier. So you can literally have, and I'm using VS Code, but the same thing will work with whatever AI application, and you can have AI on one side, you can have Power BI desktop on the other side, and it just first you connect, you install the MCP server. So I already have it here installed. You can see a bunch of tools. So we basically expose everything you can do in terms of tabular semantic modeling. It will be part of this MCP, and you just say what you want. Like you connect first. You just say connect to the sales Power BI desktop. You don't need to be very specific. Of course, it will depend on the model that you are going to use, how smart it is to find the tools. So I just made a connection, and now I just say, hey, analyze the naming convention of the table that I just manually renamed, and let's start it. And you can see AI, and this is something that LLMs are really good at. It will go, and it will detect a bunch of things. It will get the naming convention, it will detect errors and suggest those errors. It will also suggest how can you make things even more consistent. And now I can just say, okay, now go ahead and apply the same naming convention across my model. And again, together with the MCP server, because it has all these tools to do the renames on all the objects, it will just call the tools. Another thing important, it has this approval workflow by design that before making the change is going to ask you, because I can tell you this will break your models, because you need to, you are basically trusting an LLM to make a change to your semantic model. But again, you can keep it grounded, you can be more specific, and you can try it, do a backup, you can try it until you get the right prompt, until you get the final result. So it's important to have this sort of approval workflow. So I'm going to say yes, go ahead. I'll let you make changes to my semantic models in Power BI desktop, and you just see it happening. You just see it happen. Just like if it is an external tool, someone connecting to that semantic model and making changes. So that's why you see it desktop flicking over there. And another thing that is quite nice is that you can keep this interactive. For example, he missed the table names. He did all the renames and all the columns in all the tables, but he missed the table names. And I can spot that, and I can say, hey, he missed the table names. And is always agree with me. I wish. Sometimes I'm working with this, and I wish I wish my wife was like that, and all. Which she doesn't, but maybe if she did, I wouldn't make that fun. Anyway, she's here.